Hello and welcome to the Midwest Motoring Podcast, sponsored by Hagerty. My name is Matt Pesaconis, Regional Territory Manager for Hagerty here in Columbus, Ohio, also covering the Cincinnati area. I am so excited for you guys to join us for our episode 24, I believe we're at. And I'm joined once again by our co-host, Mike Andreski. Mike, how you doing, buddy?
I am good. Long time no talk on this podcast.
Dude, it's been a long time since
it's been about a month now since,
So many podcasts that we've done. It's just I've been so busy talking. So no, we've not done too many, but we have done some. But what I wanted to do is, we're going to lead in a little bit, and then we're going to talk a little bit about what happened. Where have you been? Why have you been gone? And what can you tell us?
Going on a lifelong journey.
He did go on a lifelong journey. But I just wanted to mention, everybody, that this podcast is sponsored by Hagerty. Hagerty is the automotive lifestyle brand who is doing insurance, who's doing Drivers Club. They are all over the board. If you are an automotive enthusiast, they have definitely something there for you. Whether it be the Drivers Club that gives you access to their Drivers Club member-only events, their discount partners, or their roadside assistance, and access to their great magazine, 6 issues a year, or if you aren't insured with them and are benefiting from the guaranteed value policies that they provide, I'm sure every single one of you can attest that Hagerty is here for the enthusiasts. They want you out on the track. They want you out enjoying life with their track day policies. There's just everything that you can do in a car they can help protect or get you there better. So thanks for Hagerty for sponsoring this podcast. But Mike, where in the heck have you been?
The simple answer is locked in my house with a screaming newborn baby. So we did have brought another addition into our family on October 25th. He was about 10 days before we were anticipating him to be. So it's a little bit of a surprise, and with that comes a lot of sleepless nights. So I've been awake, laying in my bed, hearing him grunt.
So if he's slap happy,
bottles.
Yeah. If Mike seems slap happy or sleep deprived, or if he's saying weird things and talking in tongues, we have
more than normal.
We have to, more than normal. We have to give him a pass. But so tell me about the little one. What's his name?
So his name's Oliver. He was, a healthy baby and everything. He's doing great. Mom's doing great as well, and my son loves him too. He got a 6-year-old as well, Gavin. So I got 2 boys right now. So definitely a fun house to be in and everything. But no, he's doing good. He's growing good. Checkups are doing great. He's putting on weight more than I am during quarantine. So that's good.
That is very good. You're doing much better than most of us, because I have definitely gained the COVID-19, as they say. Not the disease, the poundage. But we just wanted to take a second to say congratulations to both Keely and you on the new baby boy. Have you done the transplant of the engine oil or gasoline versus blood? Have you transformed him into a car fan already?
I don't think yet. No, I think he's still got more. I think his mom's mostly been trying to keep him away from that. Gavin and I do play Monster Jam around him a lot, so he does see some trucks running around and kind of tracks him with his eyes a little bit. But we'll work on it. We got to get him some more car onesies and stuff.
Well, excellent. Well, hey, man, I'm so glad to have you back. I know that it's going to be in and out every once in a while here until little Oliver gets kind of a little bit more meat on his bones, so to speak. But we've got a routine. In a routine. You got to get that routine down. But we have a really exciting podcast for you guys today. We want to talk about, first, some new news that I know that Mike is extremely passionate about. He owned one of these cars previously, and that's the 2020 or 2022 BRZ that came out and was debuted. So we're going to get some hot takes from Mike on that and talk a little bit about that car. We're going to talk about I think we're going to have some time to talk about a Mercedes that's been crushing some records. And then lastly, we're going to talk about another car purchasing challenge. This one, we actually might have to purchase something, and we'll get into that all on this episode of the Midwest Motoring Podcast, sponsored by Hagerty. And we'll be right back after this. All right, Mike. So one of the first topics we want to talk about today, I think, like I mentioned in the intro, you have a favoring,
I have a soft spot for this car.
I was going to say you favor this car probably more than I do. And so I kind of want you to take the reins on it and lead us into it.
Yeah, so over my baby hiatus, Subaru announced their updated 2022 Subaru BRZ. So it's got a redesign. Of course, they have always increased stuff as everything goes on. So it's still running a Boxer engine in it with the 2.4. However, they did increase their horsepower to 228 horsepower and 184 pound-foot of torque.
So what did the car? I mean, so you mentioned the engine. So let's kind of dig into the engine a bit. So what was the original engine?
The very first gens, that was like 200 horsepower and 151 pound-foot torque out of a 2-liter.
So it's a 2-liter flat 4.
Yep.
And naturally aspirated. The new one's going to be naturally aspirated as well. And it's a Boxer, as the ad continually told us. A Subaru Boxer, by the way.
Subaru.
Has Toyota said that they're going to be doing anything like this?
I haven't heard anything from Toyota because, as a lot of us know, that Subaru partnered with Toyota to produce this car, and a lot of it is the Subaru engine drivetrain with Toyota frames and kind of like a lot of their technology too. Since Subaru announced this, we haven't really seen much from Toyota as far as what they're going to do with their 86. So I can't confirm nor deny.
According to Car and Driver, the second generation of the Toyota 86 is due for the 2022 model year. And although it will be a completely new car, it is expected to follow the same rear-wheel drive formula of the first-gen car. Developed again in conjunction with the Subaru BRZ, the 2022 86 will be powered by a horizontally opposed 4-cylinder engine, and we hope a 6-speed manual transmission. We also hope that the Toyota will address our principal complaint of the last generation and give the 86 more horsepower for 2022. So, according to Road and Track, or I'm sorry, Car and Driver, they were saying that, yeah. And I'm looking at a rendering.
It's coming.
The rendering looks
like a mix between a 86 and a Supra.
Well, honestly, the front looks to me like the 86 mixed with the Nissan 400 prototype that we looked at earlier. It's got that kind of gaping, rectangular looking front end. But anyways, back to the BRZ. Back to what we do know. So, yeah, you mentioned the old one had 200 and what horsepower?
Just 200, and then I know they updated it because people were complaining, and then moved it up to 205.
Oh, big moves. Big moves coming from
there
Subaru.
Was the big difference in it was the torque curve, or the dip that it had. And
but it's supposed to have, what, 200 and... What's the new one at the 2.4 supposed to have?
228.
228. So a sizable increase in horsepower, and as the advert had said, a 15% increase in torque. Which
so it's 184 now.
Yeah, we looked at it was about 184. I think it was actually about 179 when I did the calculation, but
according to the press release, they said 184. So that 15 is probably like closer to like a 16.
Maybe. I wonder. And you mentioned the torque dip. I wonder if the torque dip's 15% less.
That's what I'm hoping. It's not even present any longer. That was one of the first gens that just killed it. And you're driving it.
Second gen also still had the second gen. Got rid of a little bit of it, but they still had a torque dip. If I recall, the BRZ fanboys out there and fangirls will probably tell us otherwise. And I'm not a huge fan of the BRZ. I was a Miata fan, always will be a Miata fan probably. I do respect the 86 and the BRZ for what they were, and I actually love the way that they look. I was just bummed by their performance a little bit.
I think everybody was, and myself driving it, and I know I talked to a lot of other BRZ individuals. They're always like, I wish I had a turbo from the factory. Why don't they do an STI turbo? Get it up to 300 horsepower. The chassis can handle it. It'd be a lot better car. And for what it is, and whenever I had mine, I enjoyed it with the 200. It wasn't super fast, but it was a good entry sports car, and I think that's what they're aiming for, especially for the price. Now, Subaru was asked, of course, at their press releases, why don't you do a turbo with it? And they're like, well, that's going to change the center of gravity. You have to lift the the engine up a little bit higher because of all the other components you're running on it, because of the Boxer concept. And the purpose of this car, like the Miata, was for it to handle well outside of being blazing fast. And I think that's where they're continuing with this.
I mean, I don't know if I 100% believe them when they say that they would have to raise the center of gravity and it would upset the handling, because the aftermarket. Whoop. Yep. Thank you, Subaru. Thank you, Subaru. I don't want this. Subaru. Don't go to their website. It'll autoplay a bunch of things. But yeah, so I think the aftermarket community has put in tons of turbos in these cars, and I don't really think it has done anything to upset the handling or the weight distribution or the center of gravity.
I feel like for the average driver, I would confirm with that. I think if you're pushing it to its absolute limits, which we're not unless you're a professionally race car driver.
I mean, if you're a professional race car driver, you're not even going to be using a standard car. It's going to be
yes,
right.
Yeah, I agree. So the other part too with it is I know a lot of people would want a turbo in it. I wouldn't mind having an STI variant on it. However, then it's going to push the car up to the price point. I mean, they're already estimating this to be around $35,000.
What was the original?
It's around that. I think it was in the 20s because of inflation over the years.
I think it was higher than that. I thought when I looked at building a BRZ, granted, I was throwing every option at it. My price, I think, was like $32,000 for everything in, and that wasn't cheap by any means. And it's not like you're in base Mustang GT category at $30,000 almost. I think it's like $8,000 more for a Mustang.
The 2016s, the base models was $26,500, and then the limited trim was $2,000 more, so $29,000 plus destination fees. So I'd have to pull up the other cars with it to compare exactly where it's at. It was reasonably priced, and I know they've been more or less targeting the Miata and trying to keep it at that price point and a direct competitor against it. And with the horsepower, the weight, the handling characteristics, I think that's their main target. I know a lot of the V6 Mustangs or V6 Camaros would be relatively close to it as far as price.
Right.
But I don't know if you're going to get the same type of handling experience or that driver experience that they're aiming for.
Yeah, and I mean, it's different cars, right? And you are looking at a muscle car or a pony car, depending on what you're looking at, versus a handling car, a car that is a momentum car, right? As the Miata Club would say.
Miata alternative.
Yeah, and it really was a Miata alternative that you could use every day because it did have 2 seats. It did have a trunk that was
4
sizable.
Seats. It had a 2
I'm
plus
sorry,
2.
4 seats. 2 plus 2 is what I meant to say. But it had 4 seats, a fairly large trunk for a car that size, and it was reliable, economical. My only problem with the car, and I know that a lot of people both enjoyed this fact but disliked this fact, is the original came on very narrow, very economic tires, right? As everyone jokes, the Prius tires. And that made the car a little bit more slidey. I would have really preferred, if they wanted to keep it low horsepower, low torque, but more of a driver's car, is give this thing a really good suspension, give this thing a really sticky tire, or at least make it an option, because a pair of, put in a pair of coilovers, those cars handled amazing. So
yeah, coilovers and tires. And I know with the new one, what they've done is they've, instead of coming out of the factory with the cheap Toyota or the cheap Prius tires, as they said, is they have put on Michelin tires that are a lot more grippy.
Right.
So they have increased a lot of the grip, and I think they're aiming it more to be a little bit more refined than the first one. I think the first one when it came out was kind of like, hey, this is going to be a fun car. You're going to get in it. You're going to slide it around easily, and you're going to have fun with it. And you're going to experience like, hey, this is a good, fun car. And then just kind of get that excitement from there. I think over the years, especially with a lot of their packages, either Subarus, the STIs, or Toyota, whenever they started adding the aero kits and things, they started beefing up the tires.
Right.
Some of the suspension and tweaking it so it would be a little bit better of a handler.
I mean, the crazy thing is, and the the fans of Subarus and the fans of the Toyota 86s and the BRZs and even STIs or WRXs, the aftermarket community has done a ton of work to keeping these cars relevant, fast, and agile. And honestly, I mean, the car looks good. The increase in performance and the increased size of the motor is good. I think they also updated the interior to make it more, in line with 2020 and future demands, including things like the new safety features, the new radar guided cruise controls and stuff like that, and a digital dash, right? So like they're really trying to make this car more relevant and continuing to keep it relevant, and I just thought of this, by the way. Every time I see their horizontally opposed boxer engine image, the gauge cluster kind of looks like that, because you've got the big circle in the middle and then the cylinders shooting off the sides. I don't know if they did that on purpose or not, but that's what it's.
I believe it was.
Probably. But I think it looks like a good looking car. I do get Porsche Panamera vibes off the front.
Porsche Panamera or an old RX-8 from the front.
Yeah, I could definitely see an RX-8. The lights look good. I think they're updating lights. Very, again, Nissan Proto. I know that this is a production car and the Proto is a prototype, but that scalloped look is very aggressive. So I do think it looks good. It's got some haunches to it, a little bit more accentuated wheel arches, which is nice.
It looks a little bit wider too, from the flares on the wheels, and I like how they kept with the original design. It looks like it's the second gen instead of a completely different take on it. It still looks a lot like the BRZ from the original ones.
Yeah, and they were saying that it's got 50% increased torsional rigidity and 60% increased lateral rigidity and a very fast 13.5 to 1 steering ratio. My only thought, and this is a gripe against the existing BRZ and 86 community, is that everything underneath is steel. So I don't know what the underneath is going to look like, and also the suspension geometry of the old ones it's not as refined as it could be, and it doesn't lend itself to updates as well as some of the contemporaries like a Mazda Miata. So it seems to me I don't know the gens, but the first gen and second gen of the BRZ could have been a lot better, but they had a lot of cost cutting and the steel subframe and things like that. So I'm curious to see if they've done anything against that to try to make it a little bit better for the aftermarket community, or at least a more robust handling characteristic.
With it being the first one, I can see, this is what we need to improve on. This is where we can get it to be a little bit better. Kind of like the Miatas over the years. I know the NA, they really knocked it out of the park, so they just created the NB basically the same as the NA. But they've, throughout the times, updated suspension and fine-tuned it for what the car is and adjusted accordingly. So, getting underneath it and looking at it, I'm sure we can find out, and I would assume it would be better.
I'm hoping that it is. Yeah, they've come a long way. Manual transmission, right?
I believe so, with the optional optional automatics, or
yeah. So I'm reading
automatic.
I'm reading through all their stuff. So you got a 6-speed manual option and then an automatic with paddle shifters option. And I don't know why it said this, but the transmission with the paddle shifters also has downshift rev matching. I would hope so. It's an automatic.
It kind of has to.
Curious to see what kind of technology they use in the automatic, and if the automatic would be any more fast. Because what did it have previously?
It was a 6-speed standard, or it was an automatic. I think it was a 6-speed automatic. I never really looked at those. Whenever I saw one, I just kind of looked past it.
Right.
I'm glad, because I know Subaru is going a lot for the CVTs, that they didn't put a CVT in it for the automatic option.
I mean, it might be, but just with a simulated 6-speed, who knows?
With
but yeah,
rev matching.
With rev matching, it's just
rev matching CVT.
It's just a band. It's not rev matching. It's just a fake. Yeah. Or it could be pumped in audio. So we'll know more. But yeah, our initial impressions are fairly good. I'm pleasantly surprised with the design. I think the front 3/4 look is a little bit better than the rest of the look. The back still looks like a BRZ. Still has the ducktail spoiler, which is cool. Split rear exhaust. The brakes look pretty small, but then again, it's not designed to go fast yet. So hopefully It'll just be a little bit faster. It'll be a little bit better because I know things like the Mazda 3 Turbo all-wheel drive will probably eat this thing up on the freeway on ramps. So
My overall impression is similar to Matt still too. Is I like the appearance of it. I like what they've done. I think it's got that aggressive look. It is, I would say, a head turner of a car. I know looks are subjective,
very much so.
but I like it. And the interior, I'd like to see what type of plastics that they used into it. If it's more of a soft touch, or if they still kind of went to the harder, cheaper stuff.
Right.
Just to kind of see. The seats look good. I know the old BRZ seats were comfortable. I enjoyed those, but I know they're expecting it to be 2021 is when the models are going to come out. So
yeah,
I'm
late
excited
2020.
to see
So it's going to be a 2022 model.
but just late arrival, 2021.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm excited to see it. I definitely, I'm actually kind of contemplating it. So.
Oh gosh, they definitely
contemplate everything.
You contemplate everything. We all do. Every car person, contemplates things. They go, well, maybe I could make it happen. But the other thing is that the car, like, they just flashed the interior. I see the look of, like, the center console a little bit. It looks pretty good.
Yeah.
I'm not mad at it. The only thing that I could be upset about is the power. But who knows? I'll got to go drive one. Maybe it'll change my mind. Because I did get to drive your old BRZ, and I did feel like it was just not, like, it needed to grip more. I wanted more front-end grip out of it. It wanted to wash a lot. But yeah, so we'll see. So Subaru, we can't wait to know more about your 2022 BRZ. That brings us to another interesting car that I don't really care for the looks. It's really aggressive, and I think I hit the nail on the head on this one. It is the 2021 Mercedes-Benz AMG GT Black Series.
How many times did you have to take a breath during that?
Oh gosh, it was like 4 breaths. But this car, everybody knows the Mercedes-Benz AMG. It's an amazingly good-looking car, sleek, sexy, long front end, short. It's got the short rear deck to a long front hood, and it's just the quintessential aggressive-looking car. I honestly think that it looks like the German Viper. It's a 2-seater. Kind of long nose sports car / supercar. They made a Black Series. So for those of you who don't know, AMG has another level to it, which they call the Black Series. And they do this for a lot of different AMG models, but they did one for the AMG, basically the Mercedes-Benz AMG GT, and it looks aggressive. You've got front louvers, you've got louvers over the wheel archers, hood scoops, vents, front splitter, a rear spoiler. Mike,
spoiler on a spoiler.
Spoiler on a spoiler. And I'll talk a little bit about that. Spoiler alert on the spoiler. Is that this thing looks aggressive. The images we're seeing are in bright orange, which, if you're going to get a car this loud, make it loud. But apparently, it has a lap record around the Nürburgring of 6 minutes and 48 seconds. Mike, what do you think about this thing?
I think it's kind of slow, honestly. So for the AMG GTs, I was never a big fan of their looks. It is the quintessential long nose front, short. I was just never a fan of them. This is an aggressive car, and I do like the appearance. The interior, obviously, since it's an AMG and Mercedes, is someplace that I would like to be for sure.
Right.
The overall, I can't deny what it is and the power of it, and it is an aggressive, it is good-looking car too.
Here's what I'll say: AMG and Mercedes-Benz has, over the last, I think, 5 or so years, been making some of the best muscle cars in the world.
Yes, they have.
Honestly, like the AMG G6 or G60, AMG E63 AMG is just such a crazy car. They've got some weird names though. Come on, Mercedes, make it easier. Call it something like the Falcon or something like that. No, that's not. It's not in their nature. But anyways, like it's.
I feel like AMG is like Dodge, just of better quality, because like let's stick a V8 in everything we can and make it as fast as heck, and then make it look good.
Fast as heck.
Yeah, I had to catch myself.
Good catch. But yeah, you're right. It's like, hey, we made a really kick-ass V8. Oh, and then we're going to put 2 turbos inside the V8. Oh, and then we're going to give it a wing on a wing. Oh, then we're going to widen it by 15%. Oh, it's got 720 horsepower. Like,
just put some super sticky tires on it.
Super sticky tires. Let's go to the ring and see what we can do. They have gone above and beyond in making something crazy. And about that spoiler, this spoiler to me looks like a retractable like lawn chair implement, or like a retractable like a grill with like the side pieces, right? Because it looks like scaffolding with a smaller wing just above the wing on the back. Then a bigger wing is placed on top of that then has louvers that look like they extend outward beyond the car. So it's just a massive wing. I mean, it absolutely reminds me of the Dodge Viper ACR, or the SRT Viper ACR. I stand corrected. Just a massive wing, massive louvers, the hood scoops, all of it. And it's beaten some times around some pretty ridiculous tracks, including beating the Viper's time around the Nürburgring.
Do you remember those old Schick commercials, the Razors? Whenever they had like 19 blades. I feel like
the Mach 5.
I feel like that's what AMG did with this spoiler. And I know doing like wind tunnels and stuff like that this probably creates some large amounts of downforce at speed.
Right.
So I'm sure it's actually functional, but it is a massive, very unique looking spoiler.
So for all my Viper fans out there, including my dad who owns one, he doesn't own an ACR, but he owns a Gen 5 Viper. The Viper ACR around the Nürburgring lapped it at 7.1 seconds. So 7 minutes and 1 second. And this ACR or this AMG did the 6:45. I think it fixed 6:48. Holy mother. That thing is blitzing fast. Now, at the same time, though, the Viper ACR did not cost $326,000. This bad boy does.
Well, the Viper probably doesn't have an interior like this.
I don't know, man. The Gen 5 Viper interiors look pretty good. Probably not as nice as this, but then again, I think it's pretty darn close. I will say the front visibility looks a little bit better in the AMG than it does in the Viper, but the Viper's like looking through a mail slot. Only made worse by the Camaro. The Camaro is the only one that I think is worse than the Viper.
So here's a question I'll pose to you. Would you take this car, or would you get a McLaren 765 LT?
Is that the same cost? What's the is it the 765 is the new one?
Yeah, 2021's. I'm not sure of the cost on it. Let me see if we can find it here fast. I don't believe it's as expensive.
It's about the same. So it's
$358,000.
$358,000 according to Motor Authority. So, I mean, personally, I think that this 765 LT looks better, and I hear that that 720S McLaren is like the best car for everything because it like drives around the street great, it drives on the track amazingly. It just is like an amazing all-around car. Whereas if the black is anything like any other Black Edition car, they're known for their savagery. They are known to be backbreakingly stiff. They are a car built for the racetrack and not for like daily driving. I don't have any experience in any of them. So McLaren, AMG, if you want to send them, Mike and I will test them back to back.
We'll test them.
Yeah, we'll test them neck and neck.
We're experienced race car drivers.
Hey, Honda's got their testing facility right by here. We could maybe go there and test around the test track for them. So
testing
who knows?
Facility there, Mid-Ohio. We got lots of places.
There's a lot of places around Ohio that we could do some amazing tests. It's snowing out now, so maybe wait.
Inclement weather. We can test them in.
Yeah, you want to see what your car does in snow? We'll figure it out. I mean, you pose an interesting question, Mike, with which one will I buy? But that kind of brings us up to our next topic, which, unfortunately, while you were away, I was in a bit of a motor vehicle accident. Everybody's okay at the moment.
At the moment?
At the moment. I got rear-ended. Like, my back hurts. But, you know, it is what it is. the main thing that hurts is my pride because my car is gone. They totaled out my A6, so I no longer have it. It's no longer in the garage, and that means I have an empty space in my garage, and I need to buy something to replace it. But the good news is I also have 2 daily drivers already, so the A6 was kind of just like a special car that sat in there, which means I now can buy a sports car or a fun-to-drive car. And so I posed the question to you, and we're coming up with some interesting ideas. But here's the thing. So we're going to do a challenge, just like we did our previous challenge with, like, if I had $40,000.
$1 million car challenge.
Yeah, with the Echo, but I won't do it because Keely was very mad at my Echo. But maybe I will. But anyways,
no,
it's coming back. I have the button. I can just do it right here. Is that we want to see what your guys' thoughts are. We're going to post and put some restrictions in here in the podcast, and then we're going to do a part 2 next episode or a couple episodes from now where we're going to talk about your guys' recommendations, and then we're going to go through those. But basically, it's like this. I have a spot for a fun-to-drive car. I want to have something fun for the summertime. I do have a kid, so I want to keep it with 4 seats. I've mentioned this a bunch of times on the podcast, but it's got to be fun to drive. I want to take it to the track occasionally. Great on the twisties and fast, right? That's the big thing is, I do have a Miata, so Miatas are fast. I'm not saying they're not, but I want something that is fast in a straight line, at least could beat, that car in a drag race. So, Mike, here's our challenge. Let's find Matt a new car. The Let's Buy Matt a New Car Challenge is what we'll call it. Hold on. Let's Buy Matt a New Car Challenge. Okay, that's enough of that.
We just lost a listener.
We did. We lost like 7. But we want to make sure that, like I said, there's some restrictions. Let's see what we can come up to. So I really want to see if I can get something with 4 seats. I want it to be fast. 2-door or 4-door, don't really care. I prefer the look of 2 doors, but heck, Type R is on the list, you know what I mean? So want it to be fast, want it to be fun to drive, something that, gets the adrenaline up, and then is something that can be taken to the track relatively easy. So, going through these, one of the things I will say is like cabriolets or convertibles are kind of out because they're hard to take to the track without putting in a roll cage. Right, our Miatas, we got to put roll cages in before we can even take them to the Mid-Ohio. So convertibles are probably out, so I'm looking for hard tops. But I know I gave you this stuff earlier on. I was curious to see what you came up with, and we can either go back and forth or we can just kind of let you go through it. I talk about your options, and then we pose it to the audience.
Yeah. So I pretty much found a wide range of anything, and throughout my day, I always send those over to Matt, and he goes, interesting.
It's literally every time. It's just interesting.
Interesting. I'm like, that's a no. So there are a few of the ones, and really from anywhere. I've been trying to push them to a 2-door sports car, or not a 2-door sports car, a 2-seater sports car, just because of my experience with a child.
Well, if you've got if you got 2-seaters on that list, let's save those to the last. But I want to hear your 4-seaters if you've got any.
Yeah. So the first one, the BRZ. So we just spoke about it. It is a 4-seater. It is a good car. It is a good platform. You can take it to the track. It has a hard top. It would be a good sports car, and it could,
what's a say we buy it new? What's a brand new 2021 BRZ
Which
cost?
go for the 2022, and that's around the 30s.
Okay, so but 2022 is not out yet. But I guess they'd be out late. So
about less than a year.
They'll be stretching it. I think that's stretching it, but maybe
your itch is going to be a
bit scratchier.
I got that.
Yeah, I got an itch. I need scratched.
I need something to drive this summer. Yeah, so you might be able to, if you were looking for something new for the BRZs around the 30,000, with the new ones coming out, you may be able to get a decent price on it, depending on when you were to look for them. So that would be something you could use for a bargaining chip. But you've driven them before, you know what to expect, and you know what the aftermarket community is out there. So it would be something that you can
there are some really great, aftermarket cars that I've seen out there, and like the BRZ community is extremely strong. So if anyone goes into buys that kind of car, the forum support's great. The aftermarket parts are available. You can really make these cars your own. So that's a very strong contender, for a lot of people. I think to me, it's a little slow, and that's the only thing that really holds the BRZ back in my list, I think, is the fact that in a straight line it's not very fast.
However, if we were to take a track day out and go to Mid Ohio, we would be competitive against each other based on the current cars that we have.
True. I mean,
So
it would not be outlandishly faster than the car that you got right now.
yeah,
Especially, but
no,
Mid Ohio is a tough track, man. I'll tell everyone out there, and if you haven't been to Mid Ohio or on Mid Ohio, get out there and do a track day once or twice. It's a very technical track. The first, I'd say, 9 turns are pretty fast. The back half of that track gets pretty technical. So if you've got a momentum car, like, you're not going to be far off from some of the higher horsepower cars. Now, if it's something out there with a lot of horsepower, like a 458 Italia, then yeah, it's going to outpace you with a good driver behind it. But I've been out there a couple times in some pretty underpowered cars like a Miata, and really kept up with some higher horsepower cars like Mustangs, Camaros, and stuff like that.
a lot of the tracks those cars can. So that was one of them. I know we just spoke about it, and you kind of already expressed your feelings on it, so I had to bring it up first.
But here's the thing.
So
It's one of those cars. The BRZ is a car that I wanted. Like, it was on the list of cars that when I was looking for the next car, I wanted it. But I was really looking for something a bit more. I was driving a lot more back then, like daily driver more, a lot more mileage, a lot more time in a car. So it went from me wanting a sports car to me wanting a luxurious, like, nice car to be in because I spent more time. Now, driving it once again is just fun for me. So it's not a bad recommendation. I'm not mad at it, but it's
good. You shouldn't be mad at anything.
it's probably not the highest one on my list. What do you got next?
So two-seater. The 9 and 11. I mean, you spoke about it. This is one that you've always wanted. Porsche is always, whenever you say I have one type of scenarios or drive about it, you do have a sense of pride with it.
As who was it? I think it was Tom Cruise said, Porsche, there is no substitute, right? That dang clock. Hold on. We'll do this again. As Tom Cruise, I think it was, said, Porsche, there is no substitute. And yeah, and the 911 probably is my number 1 or number 2, honestly, that I'm looking at currently, right? And that's kind of why we're posting this list. Is I'm open to a lot of different ideas, and I want to, make sure that I get something fun and exciting that and that is going to scratch the itch, And the 911 is a car that I think a lot of people, it's their poster car, right? I had a 997 Turbo on my wall growing up, and when they reviewed it in on Top Gear, it was like, to me, that was just such a cool car. You could use it every day if you wanted to. I won't have to, but use it every day. Had usable space, 4 seats, even though the back seats are tiny. Yeah, so that one's definitely up there. I mean, there's not much more we have to say. Go check out my our interviews with Paul Milligan, because we also talked about that a lot. What do you got for? Okay, so do you have only 2-seaters left?
No, I got a few other ones.
All right, this one,
I'm just going to throw it out there because it's a common car. It's something you can find. It's going to be a good one, especially if you get one of the current gens. The Ford Mustang.
Okay.
So, I mean, you get like a GT 500.
Yeah, she's GT 500. You went for the top dog. Yeah, I mean,
hey, find a used one on the market, not brand new.
Brand new, they're probably cheaper than they are on the used market right now.
Everything is like that.
Well, I guess it depends on the year. Like, you could get an older Shelby GT 500 for like, I think I've seen some for like 50s, 60s, but like the newest Shelby with 700 and some horsepower. Dang.
I have an uncle who lives out at Laguna Seca, and he's got he had a GT 500 that he used to run around a lot, and he absolutely loved it. It was a lime green. And he's got a lot of friends with him too, and obviously they love them a lot. They're good cars, a lot of power out of it, handle pretty well.
I mean, even the GT350 or the GT350R would be fantastic cars. Now, I think the GT350R had an option to keep its rear seats, kind of like the Demon. So you'd have to make sure, obviously, that the rear seat option was there, or maybe it was an option to remove the rear seats. I was always impressed by the GT350R and the packages that Ford put together, like the carbon fiber package with the carbon fiber wheels. I know it was an expensive package. I think it was like a $13,000 package. But if you looked at all the things that you got, including 4 carbon fiber wheels, like full carbon fiber wheels, which normally are like $20,000, it kind of made sense. But that Voodoo. I think it's the Voodoo motor, right?
Yeah, the Voodoo engine.
It's a fantastically good motor. Now, it had some reliability issues with it being flat planes, which is one of the reasons why they went back to a traditional crankshaft in the Shelby 500. But Mustang, not a bad option. My only concern is I've had a pony car / muscle car. I had my GTO, right? So that's like it's there. And the only other gripe I have with Ford products is that sometimes their interiors can, like, their performance is fantastic. Their looks like their exterior looks are really good, but sometimes the soft touch plastics and things are in bad places. You get a lot of scratchy plastic, but I've been impressed with Ford products as of late. But yeah, I've been in some GTs. You're just like, just everywhere. It's hard plastic. What do you got next?
The next would be a GTR. So I know we talked about one of those at the beginning of Are They Relevant? So I think this would be still a good car to get. I don't think you're gonna be getting one new, of course.
Oh no,
who knows?
A lot of these are like used, but there are some new cars that I could afford. Yeah, I would definitely be looking at like a used GTR. And I've looked at some nice ones, man. So I'm a little weird when it comes to GTRs, and maybe you call me a purist, maybe you call me I don't know, but I think that these cars were put together by some really masterful mechanics. Enough so that they felt it wise to print their name on a plaque and put it on the motor. A lot of these cars have aftermarket parts put on them by everybody who owns them, and a lot of them don't have the plaque of the gentleman who built that motor anymore, or some of them remove them because they put aftermarket parts and stuff. To me, I'd almost want a car that's not been, I use the word molested, but like not been tampered
unmodified
with. Yeah. And maybe, like, if you put in a different intake manifold or if you put in different runners, that's not bad. Different exhaust, okay. Maybe a tune. Like, that's not really too crazy. But it's when I see things like, welded valve covers and ethanol injection and E85 conversions and all this other crazy stuff that you're going, okay, I'm now just going to be inheriting and buying somebody else's potential problems. So I would much rather find a clean example of a GTR and allow myself to put in some of those modifications if I wanted to later. But because those cars were so good just by themselves. Depending on the gen, because like you could get the first gen, which had like 500 some horsepower, still very fast, but had transmission issues, right? Like I think they said the transmissions would survive like 13 hard launches using the launch control, and then they had to be replaced. I think it was Gen 2 updated the transmission. So yeah, I think that's a pretty good one. Those are definitely up there in cost, so it's a little bit harder of a pill to swallow for sure.
I think a lot of these cars on the list too kind of piggyback on what you're speaking on is a lot of them are going to be, they're sports cars, they're going to be driven.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So, or modified in some sort.
And sometimes that's okay, right? So for example, looking at like Porsche turbos, it's like if you want a turbo, they're expensive. Now you can find some ones that have been driven and not beaten, but driven. And that might be okay too, because if I do want to take it to the track, I don't want a pristine model, low mileage car, because then I'll feel bad for beating the crap out of it. But if
I'll be scared to drive it hard.
Yeah, but if it's a car that like has a couple miles on it, like I probably wouldn't do anything over like 80,000. But like if you've got a car that's got 50 to 60,000 miles on it, it's had some love. Maybe it's gone to 1 or 2 track days. Like it's survived, And yeah, it's probably some excess wear on the car, but I'm also gonna wear it. So. And I do my own work a lot of the time. I do my own oil changes. I do all my maintenance and stuff like that. So it's like I'm not afraid to get my hands dirty if it means dropping a motor and doing some valve work or anything like that. What do you got next?
A guy.
And I know a guy. I know a couple guys that are able to help me out.
All right. So the next one, I'm going to lump them together.
Okay.
So the next 3, I guess I'll say, would be a BMW 1 Series M.
Oh, okay.
Or an M2 Competition. So I think that's the new ones now. Or the ATS Vs.
Okay. Those are, I think you could lump them together. I think I'd be like, those are very compelling cars. The 1M has gone up in value to a point where they're almost like you don't want to drive them. But the M2 Competition,
That's a little bit newer still.
A little bit newer. The looks are pretty darn aggressive, and they look pretty sweet.
Yes.
Well, yeah, I'm not a BMW guy, but I do like the M cars, and you almost have to buy an M car for me to like have them give me any kind of excitement when I see them. But I think like most people would be like, oh, you should get an M3 or an M4. The M2, a little lighter weight, a little bit smaller wheelbase.
Same engine. I think they just detuned it a little bit. So if you get a tune on there, you can put out the same amount of horsepower for a car that's significantly lighter.
Right. Plus a little bit shorter wheelbase, so it'll want to change directions a little bit easier. That's a good one. I did see one over at one of the auto lots around here, and I was really taken by it. Now, I will say that a 911 seems to have a little bit more room in the back seats.
You just said 4.
I did. And you know what? Honestly, it's for like to put my son back there for like a 5-10 minute drive. Like it's not to do a road trip across the country with my son in the back. It's just like, hey, we're dropping him off at the grandparents or the babysitter's house, or like maybe we want to go grab some ice cream. I just don't want to exclude him. Or it's like the motorcycle thinking. It's like, hey, if you've got 3 people that you want to take someplace, you really can't on a motorcycle. I mean, you could.
I mean, if you had a friend that's a guy that you wanted to take someplace, I would say no.
We get to go butt to tail. No,
I would say buy your own motorcycle if you really want to come with me. Like,
yeah, no, I'm not letting you on my bike.
Sorry, bud.
You're gonna walk. You're walking. So I think I know the M2 competition is a really wicked car. So that's a pretty interesting thought. I didn't really give too much thought to.
I like the ATS Vs too. I know that one is a little bit older, and they have the CT4 Vs or the CT5s, and the ATS is a little bit bigger. I've always liked the looks of the ATS Vs.
They look great. The chassis is good.
Oh yeah, I know it's a little bit more competing against the M3 in that range, but still, it'd be a twin turbo V6. Be a fun little car. A little bit more legroom in the back.
Right, a little bit more legroom. My only gripe with the ATS is the interior, that Clue system.
Yeah, I don't think it even had a clue of what it was doing.
Well, like a lot of car manufacturers have come, like they did the similar things, but with touch screens, whereas the Clue system was like a haptic button on a piano black screen thing.
It wasn't a screen. It was pretty much like plastic, just with a little bit of haptic buttons, like sensors in it, and
yeah, it just like buzzed when you press, and it didn't always work. Like sometimes you'd be pressing the button, it wouldn't do anything, and then all of a sudden it'd be like, if you're trying to change the heat, you hit it like 6 times, nothing happens, and all of a sudden it just jumps 6 degrees, and you're like, what in the world?
My argument would be those are things that you should not be concerned about on the racetrack.
You got to turn your heat up, man. Add some horsepower. You got to turn the AC off, turn your heat up. All right, so
yeah, get the vent.
What do you got?
So those are my regular ones.
So those got 4 seats.
Yeah, those are the ones that I found with 4 seats. I mean, there's a couple other ones that I was going to throw on there, like a Hellcat or something. But
so what's your next one?
So the next one's like just sports cars. I'll just kind of like throw these all together so we can kind of talk about them as you see fit, which one catches your fancy. The 370Z, kind of like a Nismo edition, or just finding a good quality 370Z.
I have always loved the look and sound of the 370 and 350Z. Now, the interior is, and I don't know why this matters.
It hasn't changed for 10 years.
It hasn't changed. And I also like the G37, which had the same exact interior. So, yeah, I mean, I think the Nismo is actually a pretty darn good car, and you can get them brand new for fairly inexpensive because they're at the end of their rope, basically.
However, I would rather buy a used one, especially because nothing's changed in these cars.
Nothing has changed. Nothing.
So you could pretty much, save a couple, get one with 20,000 miles and save a couple $1,000s. I know COVID pricing's changed a little bit more than everything else, but it would be an acceptable car to get and kind of continue to make it your own.
I mean, so I guess not only because we talked about the interior problems. The other maybe issue is we talked about this with Paul. Never buy a car as an investment piece because you never know what they will do unless it's a car that has substantial history of just increasing in value. Say like a Ferrari GT2 or a Ferrari 250 GTO, right? That's just going up in value because We're losing them every year. But this car, we already see the Nissan 400 Proto. So we see that there's another car in development. So values on these cars are going to go down because the next gen is here. And eventually they will hit a depreciation cap, potentially go up from there. But
who knows?
What do you got next?
So the next one I have is kind of like the obvious choice would be a Corvette.
Okay.
Getting like a C5 Z06. Lots of them available, easy engine to work on. Just your typical front engine, rear wheel drive car.
I think if I look at a Corvette, what I'd probably be looking at might be a C6 Z06 because I like the C5s. And the C5s were the same motor that came in my GTO, the LS1 and LS2, right? So I know the horsepower, I know the power plant extremely well. The chassis and everything would be great. So I think I might want to go to a little bit more power when the Z06 of the C6. Not a big fan of the C7s. So
I think the C5s are starting to bottom out on prices, and the C6 are still kind of coming down a little bit.
We talked those would be great track day cars, like because you can get into them really inexpensive and use the money that you're saving to buy parts. Put in coilovers, tires. Yeah, you're going to go through tires quick, brakes and brake rotors and pads. That's one thing that I like. If I get an older car, I'm probably going to look up like a Brembo or a Willwood brake kit swap and throw it in because there are many times big brake kits have saved my butt on a racetrack, and so I appreciate and respect a good braking system. I also looked at like some Gen 1 and 2 Vipers, man.
Oh, that would be a nice car to have. So the last one I've had, just to kind of finish off this, and I know there's other ones out there too. I mean, like an Audi TT and stuff like that. But the last one I put on my list too, just kind of keep it in the Porsche family, would be the Caymans.
Okay.
I've always liked them. I think they look good. And I think that would be a decent, if you could, depending on the model and what you're looking for, a good handling car, more of an entry compared to a 911 would be.
Right. I mean,
not hit your pocket as hard.
Yeah, and you could let it hit your pocket hard. And that's the crazy thing is that there are so many wide varieties of the Cayman or the Boxster if you want a convertible version. Me personally, I'd want the what are you doing with the wiper, man?
Your mic. You're talking to it a little bit more.
Oh.
Yeah, you're a little bit more
doing like this.
Well, you could change the tone of it. It sounded like you're more underwater than you were.
Underwater? Oh no.
Yeah. That sounds a lot better.
Sounds better. Okay.
Yeah, so if you just want to go on your spree about the Cayman.
Yeah. So the cool thing about the Cayman is that you can kind of break your bank with the Cayman because there are so many variants to the Cayman that you can find a newer Cayman that is very expensive or go with an older Cayman back when like the Cayman and the Boxster first came out and spend very little money and make it into a really good track weapon. I just got to drive a 2015 Cayman S. Fantastic car. The interior was good, had good options, comfortable. The manual transmission was like silky smooth. The cool thing, and shout out to, well, I'm not going to do shout out because I'm going to say something embarrassing. The guy who bought it didn't have much experience with the Cayman's manual transmission. He's had other transmissions and manual transmission experience, but like this one was a little bit different to him, and he stalled it so many times. But the good thing was that he learned extremely quickly on this transmission because it was forgiving. And if you stall, and the moment you clutch in, it would just restart, like at the drop of a hat. And it did automatically. So, like, stalling was not the problem of, like, oh, crap, you like, punch in the clutch, first gear, turn, start the car, let it, oh, it's up. It's like, if it stalled, it would be like, brah, and it was alive instantaneously when you punched in the clutch. So it made it extremely easy for him to learn. And then, like, a week later after learning, he took it to the track and was doing track days. I was so proud of him. But that car was really, really fun. Noise, it even had the Porsche sports exhaust, and I thought it needed some more noise, like straight pipe that, SOB because
screamer.
Make it a screamer. But it did want to scream. I mean, it went up to I think 7,500 RPMs, like naturally aspirated, just screaming motor. Felt fast, but maybe because the engine and things were right behind my head, like it made more noise than I felt like speed. So there was a little bit of a strangeness there. Whereas for the 911 turbos, it's like the opposite. It's like no noise, but like just speed is instantaneous, and you feel like you're warped away. And Boost has that effect. I don't know if anyone out there has been in like a twin turbo car before, but when Boost kicks in, especially in those old school water cooled, like the 996 gen, it was just like a hammer hit you in the back. Like all of a sudden you'd be like, oh, and you'd just be gone with the Boost. So. Caymans are good, very great for the racetrack. I know a lot of people with them who absolutely love them.
They're great handling cars. I know the biggest complaint about them is they were always underpowered, kind of like what you were saying, is that car chassis is so good, but Porsche doesn't want it to be stepping on the toes of the 911s that much, that they've kind of always had it as the lower tier car. But it's a good handling car. I think they look great.
Yeah.
I like them. I mean, I would love to have a GT4.
Oh man, a GT4 or like even a GTS, like a newer GTS would be sweet. I definitely think I'd want a naturally aspirated one before they went with the turbos, so maybe a GT4 would be the best. But it's just one of those cars, man, that has such a potential, and the aftermarket is there for those cars too. So that's a really strong one too. Some of the ones that I picked out, definitely 911s. I've been looking at Carrera S's. I think for me, it's like you want a 911 Carrera S, and if I'm doing a Carrera S, it's in the 997 group, so that's like 2005 to 2007 or 8, I think. Maybe even later. I can't remember because there's like 997, 9.1, 997.2, and then there's the 991 Carrera S's, which are now coming out, and they're coming down in price right now. So you can find a Carrera S for fairly cheap. Not cheap, but like inexpensive for what it is. So I'd almost want to push like a late year 997 Carrera S, or go with an early model turbo and like a 996 or an early 997 turbo. I think those cars they're still the small Porsche. The 996 and 997, it's still like the 911 size, because the 991 they went a little bit bigger. But I think that would be a really great car. So it's kind of the front runner right now. And I do think, like we talked about, Porsche has a great name. Porsche has great heritage. It's also a car brand that's not afraid to allow people to be tinkerers and not afraid to have people work on their own cars. Granted, they want to do their own work, and people want to see Porsche authorized dealers doing the work. But at the same time, like, there are a ton of people out there who are like, oh, I dropped the motor out of my 911 the other day so I could do a valve job, and I did my spark plugs and everything. It's not uncommon for the home mechanic to be able to do work on these cars outside of the computerized stuff. So that,
depending on the year that you get to in most cars, there's a little bit of a point where it's, even common everyday cars, it's like, all right, there's a point where you can drop the motor out of it, you can pull it, you can do a lot of the work, compared to now I have to take it because I got 9 sensors that are giving me issues.
Right.
And I think there's always like a little bit of a breaking point in a lot of cars. But Porsche likes the mechanical stuff of it still.
Yeah, and every brand has, I'm not trying to say that nobody can work on some of the other brands. Like one of my buddies, Ed, he learned on, I think it was a 355 Ferrari, and those Ferraris were known to be bad. I think it was a 355. I might be saying it wrong. Yeah, it was a Ferrari F355 is what he's been learning on. It's a convertible, and he absolutely loves the car, and he's a great guy, right? So there are definitely ways that people can get into other brands and still do the same thing. I just think Porsche might be known a little bit more for those like home mechanics than some of the other brands. BMW would also be one up there, I think, but I have been looking recently at M4s. I think those are pretty good looking, and they have some performance, plus back seats, usable back seats. I had somebody text me, and we really want you guys, by the way, we want the listeners, we want you guys to reach out and put in some descriptions of cars and some options in the Facebook group. So we'll post this again in our Facebook group and say, hey, we're looking for some feedback, but we want listener feedback on this so we can talk about it on a later show. See what you guys think I should buy for a 4-seater, potentially sports car. Or definitely a sports car, but potentially a 4-seater. One person told me when I was talking to one of my friends, they were like, you should get a Ferrari FF. I'm like, no. I'd love it. A V12, front-mounted V12 and a 4-seater all-wheel drive, but they are expensive, and that's the problem. So Uh, I have been looking at Corvettes. The C6s are kind of right there, up there. Somebody told me Camaro, and I'm not big on the most recent Camaros just because of the visibility issues. And I've had GM products, so other than the Corvette, I'm trying to try something new. So I'm interested to see what other people have to say, Mike.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to other people's options too. I know there's some of them that we left off the list. I know you brought up the Honda Type R, or I mean, even the Veloster N. I remember we were talking about it a little bit as a potential car. So there's a lot of things. We would definitely like to hear it from you, and leave us a note on our Facebook page, or get in touch with us and let us know what you guys think so we can discuss about them a little bit later. I mean, even if you find something for sale, you're looking around or something, shoot it over to us and we
post
can,
it.
Yeah, take a look, post it, and maybe even help somebody else out in the community who might be looking for a car.
And let us know the sites that you guys are using, because I use Car Gurus, I use Auto Tempest, I use eBay Motors. So if you guys are using a different site, let us know. Let us see where you guys are looking. Also, I did spend probably a good 2-3 hours the other night on Bring a Trailer. That site is like catnip to car enthusiasts, because I was just looking through all different stuff. They had an XJ220 on there. Oh man, I would kill for an XJ220. And I was the current bid for 5 days out was $330,000. I was like, I could afford that. I could take out a second loan. I could take a second mortgage out on the house to afford that car. My dad's
sell the house and live in the camper.
Yeah, my dad was like, you wouldn't even drive that car. I was like, I'd drive the piss out of that car. I would drive that everywhere, but it would probably break, and then I'd be bankrupt. So, but yes, please put in our Facebook group, and we'll make a post about this. We want to hear your thoughts. Buy me a car, but we want to again say that this is going to be a sports car. This is going to be either a 2-seater, 4-seater, or a 2-door, 4-door. We want it fun. We want it fast. Maybe this is going to be the Midwest Motoring Podcast mobile. We're going to put some stickers down the side or some magnets down the side, take it to track days and car shows. So,
and then Mike drive it frequently.
Maybe. My Haggerty policy will allow permissive use. So, but yeah, we're excited. I'm excited. It's one of the rare times I've always wanted to have a sports car, and never really had the space or the. It's not necessarily that I haven't had the money. It's I've always needed another daily driver. So this is the first time I've been able to say this car will get not node mileage, but it won't have as many. It'll probably get 2,000 miles a year. And that's not what everybody can say. Some people are like, no, I have to have a car that I'm driving, 10,000 a year for work, and then I'm adding a 2,000 for fun. So I'm excited. But I'm not in any hurry. So I'm really excited for some options.
I would say, though, if we are going to be looking for something, I don't know about COVID pricing during the winter, but during the winter is always the better time to buy a sports car.
It's interesting because, and Paul and I talked about this on episode 23, is that right now these types of fun to drive cars during the summertime were burning out of lots. I talked to many of my dealership friends. They couldn't keep fun to drive cars in stock. They were having a harder, selling was easy to them this year. They were selling all these fun to drive cars was easier than anything. Most of the time it was because people just called and said, I want the car. Here's a down payment. I'll be there in a day. Easy. What they said the difficult thing was finding inventory this year. So they were not budging on pricing. I saw a car that I wanted to buy at $40,000 a year ago, and I saw the exact same one with the exact same VIN come up for sale, and it was $60,000 this year. I was like, holy moly! So COVID pricing is a thing, and I think a lot of people had money burning a hole in their pocket. Right? They were like, I'm not going anywhere. Might as well do something fun. So COVID pricing is the thing. However, new cars are seeing a dip, and we did read some articles on that. It's that like new car sales are down, used car sales are kind of wishy-washy, but it's the fun-to-drive stuff, the old school and the classic, that Haggerty has seen that the pricing is going up, sales are strong. Nobody is really looking away from buying those types of cars. So, especially the investor cars, like the high dollar cars, the multi-million dollar cars, like we talked about the Ferrari 250 GTO. A couple of those traded hands, right? People are investing in these high dollar cars. So, Mike, thanks for joining me today, man. This has been episode 24. 24. We're almost to 25.
It feels good to be back. That's for sure.
Man, I'm so excited to have you back at least a little bit. I know that it's going to be a little wishy-washy over the next couple weeks until the holidays are over, until little Oliver gets a little bit older, but I'm so excited to have you back. We've got a lot of fun podcasts planned in the future. We got some talks with some pretty crazy people with some really great tools, and one's going to be a great tool for the industry, especially if you like racing and track days. One's going to be talking to you about some pretty crazy stuff about storage of vehicles and some crazes that are going on with that. And those are coming up in future podcasts. But this has been episode 24. That's the clock that just went off. I'm so excited to be back, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for Hagerty for sponsoring this. But yes, please log on to our Facebook page and give us a comment on this. Just send us a comment, send us a like, and let us know what you think I should buy. I'd like to see what you guys come up with. This has been the Midwest Motoring Podcast. As always, stay safe, stay healthy, and keep driving.